Thank you, Nidhi, and very grateful that you are able to take the time and provide some perspectives and insights from your experiences as a global talent leader and helping people understand how a futurist can look at it, how a talent leader as a futurist can look at the landscape, and how people can understand how they should evolve as professionals, and also in the space of talent, how do organizations look at it. So thank you very much, Nidhi.
Thank you, Shripriya. Pleasure is all mine, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Wonderful, wonderful. Nidhi, I've always seen you as a very enthusiastic person promoting diversity, equity, inclusion, and a lot of things around it. And when we hear something on this topic, one side we hear a lot of things that organizations are doing and leaders like yourself are putting efforts into that space. And then sometimes we see the global statistics and metrics. They don't look very, pleasing for the eye. It kind of puts us down. So we believe one side there's lots happening and then the metrics don't match. Now, how should somebody read between the lines and make sense of all this, Nidhi? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
That's a great question, Shripriya. Yes, I'm extremely passionate, very enthusiastic about D&I. Let's take a moment really to reflect on the DEI journey till date. Now, diversity, equity, and inclusion rose to prominence sometime in the 1960s, driven by civil rights legislation. In the 1980s, it was spurred by changing demographics of the workforce. And then in early 2000s, I would say it was picked up more as a business strategy to achieve greater profitability. Now, today, most organizations, if you see across the world, they do understand the importance of creating a diverse and an inclusion-rich workplace. But with countries being at very different stages of cultural, social, political, economic transformation, it's actually been a colossal shift that we've all been working towards. And while I agree there is huge ground still to cover, I think we should applaud ourselves on what we have been able to achieve and where we've reached. There are many success stories. Multiple economies, if you see, are progressing on gender parity, mandatory women on boards, parental benefits, focus on pay equity. The list really is endless. But to accelerate this change from here, we really need to be intentional about every aspect of D&I. We can't leave it to chance and assume things will happen. Intentionality is what is needed to be activated to really bridge this gap. Now, more specifically, I think it needs to be built into the way we do business, the way we live, the way we think, in decisions about people's performance, careers, development. And it has to be driven through shared accountability and really robust metrics.
Correct. That's important. And what I like, what you said is everyone needs to begin being intentional about it, right? But help me understand this a little bit more. I mean, how do you see, sometimes it's like, let's say you want to take a certain point of action and then suddenly you resolve to what you traditionally would do. It's like nature versus nurture, right? Sometimes your what you are used to kicks in than what you believe you could reform or change and take action. So there's always this constant battle even every human being faces when it comes to saying, how do I look at diversity, inclusion, and equity in all of the work that I do with nurturing teams and growing moving towards results, etc. But it's always a question that comes, how do you consciously make that as a habit? And that takes a lot of effort, I would say, for different people. As you said, countries are in different stages of maturity, individuals are in different stages of maturity as well, right? So how is there any specific approaches or tweaks that people should do about this intentionality?
I think the answer somewhere lies in the question itself, Shripriya. when we say we should be intentional, what we're really trying to say is that we're not leaving it to chance. We're not leaving it to happen itself.
Correct.
We put in adequate checks and controls in the way we operate. Now, whether it is putting checks and controls in terms of processes, guardrails, in terms of constant sensitization, reminders, in terms of really questioning, in terms of really challenging the status quo, which really helps in such cases and which really helps in making this whole thing intentional. Like I said, it's important that there is shared accountability. So there is always another person, always another policy, always another process owner, always another leader, always the talent team to really challenge, to really question. And then what gets measured gets done. And that's really where the robust metrics really help us.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I mean, I just love the energy and I think passion in your voice, Nidhi. I mean, wonderful to hear you with all this energy here.
Thank you.
Good. Somewhere, I mean, I read a quote, which I think which you must have shared in some forum, where it said, the secret of getting ahead is getting started. And if you have the right attitude combined with competence and gratitude, you'll make it happen. So you're saying your advice would be not to hold yourself back and carve out your journey your way. Now, what is the missing link between this desire and action for professionals and leaders, Nidhi?
This is something I actually live by, Shripriya. Often we have the desire, but we wait for the right time, the right opportunity, the right resources. We just wait for many rights and don't act. I think usually it is the fear of failure that holds us back. Now, as children, we were just so full of curiosity and energy. Children are always moving forward, they take the plunge. They're not scared of failing. I think that is something we need to carry forward with us. It is important to acknowledge that failing is not a weakness.
Yes.
It is only a step to achieving something bigger and better.
Correct.
And I think leaders can go a long way in creating an environment where people feel comfortable experimenting, people are comfortable making mistakes and even failing.
Correct.
So act because the time is now. I think another thing to be kept in mind is that whatever you do, you do it with consistency. Now, often we start with a lot of energy and enthusiasm about something, but over a period of time, it may fade away due to a variety of reasons.
Correct.
Like they say, without commitment, you can't start. But without consistency, you cannot finish. So I think it's extremely important that the energy, the enthusiasm, the ownership that you started with, you continue to maintain that till you finish.
Correct.
I think these are broadly the two things that I would like to talk about when I actually give that quote.
Absolutely. The quote, what you said, gratitude, right? I think having such a nurturing environment that accepts, the successes as well as the failings in a positive way or in a constructive manner. That, I mean, we should all be grateful for that. Wonderful. And this actually leads to what I wanted to ask you next, Nidhi, which is to say, how should leaders visualize fearless organizations? How can we create them as we move into the future?
Sure. Actually, very recently, I came across this insightful study which explained how we can build fearless organizations by creating high levels of psychological safety.
Right.
Now, for leaders to create a work environment where people experience psychological safety, they have to practice human-centric leadership. Leadership, which is really based on the tenets of empathy, trust, and inclusion. Now, we all talk about empathy. Empathy is a skill which can actually be learned and developed over a period of time Again, by being consistent and persistent. Encouraging people to speak up with ideas, questions, concerns, suggestions, leading with authentic conversations, and actually genuinely caring about people. So caring about the person behind the professional, I think, is extremely important. There is an empathy in business survey that EY recently conducted, and we found out that 86% employees believe that empathetic leadership boosts morale, and 87% people felt that empathy is essential to fostering an inclusive environment.
Correct.
Again, another way of building psychological safety for your people and thus building a fearless organization is being inclusive, making sure that when decisions are made, they are made in a transparent manner, and that all employees have access to information they need to understand the rationale behind those decisions. I think some of these things, if we as leaders continue to do, we will be able to embed and create an environment which makes people feel psychologically safe and also helps them be themselves, thus really bringing out the best in them.
Correct. And that's what equity is also all about, right? Giving the right support as required by a person and not putting everybody, fitting them all into one box or looking at everybody equally. Right, wonderful. I mean, there's also this fact that I hear from talent leaders and HR leaders, especially in the current scenario where a lot of talent is available, and yet people say that we're not able to hire the right talent. And this seems to be like a war which is going on for many years. But why does this gap really exist when there's so much of talent available, Nidhi?
I would say, Shripriya, just as business landscape is changing, we're obviously experiencing a lot of change in the business environment. Talent paradigms have also changed. The workforce of today has very different aspirations and motivations. And organizations really need to rewire their culture and create a value proposition that actually aligns to the expectations of the workforce of today. When this does not happen, there is an expectation mismatch, and we will never be able to attract the right talent for our organization. Let me give you a couple of examples.
Sure.
Today's talent is not just looking for a linear vertical career path. You know, historically, we've all thought of growth as vertical, but today's talent is looking at diverse experiences at work. And growth for them is not necessarily vertical. It is a collection of experiences, and it could well be a very horizontal way in which they grow.
Correct.
They want to acquire skills that will help them build a long-term career value. They just don't focus on doing well or succeeding in their current roles, but building themselves for future roles, whether they are in the same organization or they may move out to other organizations.
Correct.
And therefore, it becomes imperative that organizations build this aspiration, this changing motivation. They build it into their learning and talent development strategies to be able to reach out and attract the right talent. I don't know. I hope this sort of clarifies. We can talk about more examples.
No, this is good. I mean, to say, look, although the gap exists, but it's just that the talent landscape has different expectations, right? Their expectations are no longer of linear growth. I mean, being there with and giving their life to one organization. They're looking at the multiple diverse experiences that can build their personality and their connect to their passion rather than, and also purpose, right? So that's become more than just saying I need to be in a stable job and continue doing things, to saying, look, I need the diverse experiences and I need to move forward to quickly achieve my passion and purpose. Rather, that's what people are looking at. But Well, this is becoming increasingly clear with what we see with the zillennials and the whatever the digital natives, the gens, alphas coming up, etc. So a lot of things are happening. But how should organizations really be prepared for the shift? Because the cost of hiring is all going to be increasing with, when you have a lot of change or flux in the system, right? So how should organizations create a mindset towards this, Nidhi? Any thoughts around that?
Oh, that's an interesting one, Shripriya, because absolutely, organizations need to be prepared for it. In fact, I think we're already knocking at that situation or knocking at the phenomenon that we call the future of work.
Correct.
And I think there are a couple of things organizations can do. Definitely, it becomes extremely important to understand the aspirations and motivations of the upcoming workforce,
Right.
of the workforce that's going to be the workforce of the future. Like I said, their aspirations, their motivations, what do they value? What are the anchors? I think it's extremely important to understand those and build them into your cultural ambition.
Right.
Build them into your talent processes. Be proactive about doing this rather than really being in a situation where you're already there in that scenario, and now you know that you're far behind in terms of really really sort of embedding some of those aspects into your culture. It is extremely important for any organization to be agile, and that is not something that's true for today. That has always been true for any organization. It's just that today's environment is moving at an extremely fast pace, and therefore the change and the way we are evolving is also again happening at a very fast pace. So extremely important that organizations are agile, they understand and they prepare themselves for the workforce of tomorrow. I think there are certain facts which are very, very clear. Technology is defining a lot that's happening in organizations today. We know, as I said, the Gen Zs and the alphas and the digital natives again have very different ideas of what a great workplace should look like. So I think it's important for us to understand that. And like I said, start building that into the way we do business, into the way we do work. The new workforce is looking for organizations that have a strong purpose. They are looking for alignment of their personal purpose to the organization's purpose. Right. And therefore, organizations that have a clear and a strong sense of purpose clearly stand to gain. And last but not the least, I think continuously upskilling your own talent, because while you are looking at hiring, cost of hiring, the workforce of the future, ensuring that you're upskilling your existing population to make sure that you're not completely, as you move ahead, you're not completely dependent on only the workforce of the future. Your existing population is also upskilled and ready to really face that future work. I think these are some of the things that can help organizations.
Absolutely. I mean, large organizations could really leverage their alumni for, for the great ideas that they can work on. But I still feel that sometimes today, with all the startup ecosystem and organizations looking more smaller, leaner, and they no longer do we see only the big names, right? You see smaller organizations with a lot of growth opportunities, etc. And still, the way talent is perceived in a large vis-a-vis a small organization is going to be much different. Any just quick thoughts on how should smaller organizations look? I mean, they're not going to have, first and foremost, they may not have immediately the best of talent, though some have, but not all their people would be best of talent. They'll get in people and then start developing them to kind of match their growth aspirations. But still, how can talent be looked at in a holistic way in smaller organizations as they move into the future, Nidhi?
I think it is important that smaller organizations, so there are two things actually, Shripriya. One,
Yeah.
a lot of the smaller organizations and the startup ecosystem that we're talking about is actually not short of talent, because we know and we've seen with the whole great resignation that we all sort of experienced in the last couple of years. We've
Correct.
seen that the whole startup ecosystem actually disrupted the market to a great extent.
Correct.
And there were entrepreneurial opportunities that they were providing, and there was this accelerated growth that they were providing along with great rewards. And therefore, you had a situation where every organization possibly was actually hit by very high levels of attrition.
Correct.
And I think over a period of time that has sort of stabilized. It's also because of the way the economy has evolved, and the whole recession that we've kind of seen and experienced in the West. I think in smaller organizations, there are clearly aspects that need to be focused on. It is so. Let me pick up a startup, so to say. Calling a startup a smaller organization, they are really just setting up.
Yes.
It's very important to get the right people, and it's extremely important to be able to create and build the culture that you would like your organization to have. It is a smaller organization. It is an organization which cannot, which will not have so many subcultures, so to say.
Yes.
Extremely important that you're getting the right talent in. You have the right processes, practices in place to make sure that the cultural aspirations that you have for your organization, you're moving in the right direction. I think extremely important again for these organizations to focus on, while a lot of people who come into these organizations come with the right technical skills, extremely important to look at building behavioral and softer skills, which is something that will go a long way in really making sure that they are sort of developing into well-rounded professionals. Unlike a large organization where you will always have people at different levels of maturity, different stages in their professional careers, it would be very different for a smaller organization. So I think these 3-4 aspects talent needs to focus on, along obviously with the founders and with the leadership. Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful. Very well said, Nidhi, because I think at one side in these kind of smaller ecosystems, you see a person with so much of passion who's caught with their idea, or rather, as you said, they may be great from a technical standpoint, but then getting that people and the empathy and all of those finer dimensions into the culture of the organization. And that's when you can see them surviving, as some of the biggies are, right? How can they really continue? It's not about having these instant gratification kind of scenarios and making it big, but continuing and creating the organizations for the future. Wonderful. So, Nidhi, from your vantage point, I'd love to understand, how do you see the climate and culture around women changing?
The World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap report that came out in 2022, I mean, the initial one came out in 2006, but in 2022, this report projected that at the current rate of progress, it will take about 132 years for us to reach gender parity globally.
Correct.
Now, to bridge this gap, I think it's important for us to change our lens from equality to equity. Now, equality is all about giving the same support to all, but this does not always result in equal outcome.
Correct.
With equity, each person gets what they need to be able to succeed and thrive. And this is essentially considering their unique and independent circumstances and needs. I would say that some of the ways in which we can actually deliver on this commitment to equity, because this is a large change that we're talking about, Shripriya, moving from equality to equity. And this is something that a lot of organizations have sort of committed to and are working towards. I think some of the ways to deliver this commitment is through extensive sensitization, breaking insider-outsider dynamics, creating inclusive policies, embedding fair representation in business and talent priorities. Personally, I have experienced great results with actually applying fair representation to all business and people decisions, leading to growing number of women in the workforce, in leadership roles, more women being hired, leading engagements with clients, and creating impact.
Wonderful, wonderful. I mean, this is, I think, as you said in the beginning, we have to be intentional about it and then put in the right practices to support it, right? And it's all about looking at equity rather than just saying equality, which we were looking at some years ago, but then bringing in that lens of equity to the whole thing. And as you said, deep sensitization is absolutely essential to kind of make it a reality. Wonderful. Now, Nidhi, if suppose your designation, which is currently the Global Talent Leader at EY, changes to saying Nidhi Jain, Futurist at EY, how do you see your role evolve?
So, I think, Shripriya, being a futurist is an integral part of actually being an effective leader. We as leaders have to be, like I said, intentional and persistent in applying futuristic mindset to everything we do, whether it is to do with business or to do with people. The business environment is undoubtedly uncertain, challenging, it's extremely volatile. It is up to us how we want to deal with this ambiguity, this challenge, this uncertainty. We want to deal with it with agility and resilience, which actually displays a growth mindset, or we want to deal with it with anxiety and helplessness of a fixed mindset. I think by being futuristic in our approach, we can actually make organizations future ready. We discussed about being ready for the future of work and being ready for the workforce of the future. Innovate, actually grow, and always stay a step ahead. And I think as a futuristic leader, it is important to practice unbounded curiosity about what the future holds for us, and be courageous in taking actions. Like I said earlier, be courageous, take risks, take the plunge. Create a compelling story of our organization's transition from the past to the future, which can actually be something which is uniquely inspiring about your organization for the workforce of the future. Right. Tap into new skills of the future, empower and enable your people and teams to really upskill and actually grow along with the growing future needs, I would say.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what I'm just reminded when you said curious. I mean, every leader has the potential to ask the what if questions, right? What if the future is like that? What if the scenario changes? And get curious and be ready for it. I think it's good to always have that mindset built into it. So wonderful, wonderful. I should say thank you, Nidhi. It's been, I would say, good 30 minutes that we've spent going over different perspectives, different aspects of talent, different aspects of the future. And I should say I'm grateful for the time you've taken, Nidhi, and I'm truly happy to see leaders like yourself coming and sharing your experiences for the larger audience to benefit. Thank you so much, Nidhi.
Thank you so much, Shripriya, and I really congratulate you for having a forum where people can come, share their voice, share their experience, because I think there is a lot we all can learn from each other.
Absolutely, absolutely. And thank you, Nidhi. Always happy to see the energy in you, and very, very best wishes for towards your continued successes.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Shripriya.
Take care. All the best, Nidhi.